If you've ever been in those situations where you logically beat the person, right? It logically makes sense to them, but they say no to you, what happened? Yeah, they're not buying into you. They don't trust you, which is the bigger part, right? If people trust you, the selling part is super easy. When you lose sales that it makes sense for them, this is going to kill you, but you need to know this, and it's the same for me, it's the same for anybody. They didn't say no to the fucking product, they said no to you. If you dress like a kid, you'll be treated like a kid. And it's the case in all areas. So dress the part. You gain so much. So as soon as you address a customer, you're immediately being put in a box. That is how humans work. I've talked about this a lot. I'm going to continue to talk about this. Do not fight human psychology. Learn to work with it. Understand how humans work. So every time you engage with someone, you're immediately getting put in a box. That means if you're knocking on somebody's door, or you're in a retail location and you're approaching somebody, what is the box they're immediately putting you in? You're here to sell something. Now, really predicated upon self-preservation and making sure that you aren't taken advantage of, most people, when you get put in that box, what do they think? What is the box they're putting you in? Be skeptical, right? Don't let them get you into something you don't want to be in, right? It's fear. Now, that's humans. That's not just sales. That's every guy knows this. How do guys know this? You hit a girl and it's the same fucking thing, right? You got to deal with it, which is why generally men have an advantage in sales in the beginning, because for a lot of guys, they've been taking no's their entire fucking life, right? They just got good at learning it. My point is, in the game of influence and building rapport, you've got 5 to 10 seconds at most, maybe less than that, to get the fuck out of that box. And how you do that is not fighting human psychology, it's working with it. And you want to create disassociation. So, raise your hand if you've had a customer tell you, man, I never let you guys sell me and I let you sell me. If you heard that, I would reverse engineer what the fuck you did, or let them know. I'm just curious. Thank you for saying that, by the way. I'll take that as a compliment. But what made me different? How did I stand out? What about me stood out? Well, you seemed likable. I felt like I could trust you. You led with questions. You seemed like you really cared about my experience. Your questions were different. Your energy was different. Make sense? If you ever hear that, reverse engineer it, because so much of success is learning how to repeat successful behavior. Versus when you don't know what you're doing, we'll say you are unconsciously competent. It's like groping in the dark. You don't really know when you're winning and when you're not, or why it's working and when it's not, right? So if you have a good day, or if you have a good experience with somebody, reverse engineer that. Figure out, well, what is that? What made me stand out? And I did. And the number one thing that I heard when I was in the field, number one thing, you don't dress like a salesman. They usually thought I was an attorney or an FBI agent or something like that. There was a way that I carried myself that took me out of that box. It helped immediately. Whereas if I put on a polo, I've got some comfortable kicks on, that doesn't mean I can't be effective as a salesperson doing those things. I know people who are. You're just getting out of a box a lot slower. Or it's something that you're having to work through. I went to a private school. So in private school, you had to wear suits, at least the one I went to. And not some fucking bougie private school by any stretch. Might make that clear. But when I moved to California, everybody wore flip-flops, polos, and I was nagged. I was like, the downside to California is you don't get to dress, this weather notwithstanding, you don't get to dress with a lot of layers and like seasonal clothes, right? It's harder to do here. And that nagged me out. And that's why people live here, of course. It's like, well, t-shirts and shorts. So I didn't have any suits. So when I started in the business, I had not a suit to my name. I had to build my suit collection. So I worked with what I had. Beyond the point, but your goal is to get out of whatever box you've been put in. Part of doing that is create disassociation with whatever that box is, so that you're not judged as a salesperson, but as somebody who's there to help them. Right? You're positioning yourself as an expert to help the person. And a lot of those associations is if you have commission breath, or you're overly excited about the sale, or you're almost combative in your style. And combative in your style might mean like you're like and trying to anticipate every objection and like quickly handle it. You could end up winning the battle and losing the war, so to speak. Right? Where it's like, if you've ever been in those situations where you logically beat the person, right? It logically makes sense to them, but they say no to you, what happened? Yeah, they're not buying into you. They don't trust you, which is the bigger part. Right? If people trust you, the selling part is super easy. When you lose sales that it makes sense for them, this is going to kill you, but you need to know this, and it's the same for me, it's the same for anybody. They didn't say no to the fucking product, they said no to you. Something about your vibe they did not like. And the awareness is learning what that is, and how do I come across in a way that is more trusting. Interestingly enough, In selling tech, this stat's about 8 years old, but I can't imagine it's a whole lot different. Guess what demographic of people is trusted the most? Asians, Indians, and they're all Asian. Isn't that hilarious? It's true. So a lot of times we talk about like negative generalizations. There are also positive ones, right? Where there's certain things that we orient with certain people. So it's hilarious, but specifically in Western culture, specifically in the United States, again, the stat's 8 years old, but I can't imagine it's changed a whole lot. We generally regard Indians and other Asians as more technologically savvy and aware. So we trust their judgment more. Whether it's true or not, who knows, but these are generalizations that could work for you. And also, my beard notwithstanding, beards generally work against you. Yeah. Now, in our culture, we're in this we like beards phase, but as a whole, this is an old school stat. We were talking about this when I was in school in psychology, so probably 20 years ago. So I don't know if that's changed much either. I know beards are very in right now, but if you have a beard or facial hair, it generally makes you perceived as less trustable. It's not that how it's kept, though I'm sure that, again, my beard notwithstanding, it's not so much how it's kept, is what we were discussing anyway. It's been a long time since I've looked this topic up. It might be fun to go do research and see if it's changed. But it wasn't that how it was kept, though that could have an impact. It was that hiding your face made people feel like you had something to hide. Like facial hair is like hiding your. That obviously is a cultural thing because there are many cultures in which wearing a beard is normal, right? Like everyone wears a beard. So I'm mostly referring to the United States, and my data is 20 years old, so this could have changed. I haven't looked into recently. Maybe worth looking at, but smelling like cigarette smoke, which upside is way less people smoke. Downside is they're getting more nicotine than ever because they're just using a different modality. But for whatever that's worth, smelling like cigarette smoke decreases your ability to be trusted as well by like a massive margin, like 8 times more likely to not be trusted. What's even more interesting about that is that particular study, it didn't even matter whether the person was a smoker or not. Like if you were a fellow smoker and you smelled cigarette smoke on someone else, it didn't change your perception of the lack of trust, which I thought was really interesting. These are really good things to know though. This one was a test specifically about cigarette smoke, but yeah, odor definitely matters. Like if you have body odor or if you have bad breath, which is why you owe it to me and anyone else in here, if they have bad breath, fucking tell them, right? Give them a breath mint, say, hey bro. Brush your teeth. Also, to that point, oral hygiene is a massive turn-off or turn on, right? Healthy teeth, healthy gums, turn on. Unhealthy teeth, unhealthy gums, turn off. So something worth noting too. Oral health, and this goes back probably to an understanding on an animal level. Oral health is a healthy indicator of the health of the person.